Welcome to Seeds for Our Future, Conversations and Explorations. Today we'll be talking with Cynthia Sue Larson. She's a best-selling author of many books, including Quantum Jumps and Reality Shifts. She has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA, a Doctor of Divinity, and a second degree black belt in Kuk Sul Won. Cynthia is the founder of Reality Shifters, president of the International Mandela Effect Conference, managing director of Foundations for Mind, and creator and host of Living the Quantum Dream. She has been featured in numerous shows, including Gaia, the History Channel, BBC, One World with Deepak Chopra. Cynthia reminds us to ask in every situation, how good can it get? You can find out more about her at realityshifters.com. Welcome, Cynthia.
How do you experience that constant engagement?
It's, for me, it's most evident when I'm able to meditate and become still. So the more I can slow down and recognize that I have an alignment with my, what you might call my soul and my physical being, in that moment, then there's sort of a purity of beingness where there's a natural alignment between all levels of my conscious and my high, middle, and low self. That's how I look at it usually. So noticing that there's what I would call the high self would be the mental body, where people would be thinking that this is what they want to have happen, and this is what they're visualizing, that kind of thing. So when that matches what's truly in my heart, what I genuinely love, not because I'm trying to love it, but because that honest to goodness is what I actually most care about in the whole world. And then when that also matches what my gut feels that I truly need on the core of my being, and all three of those match, plus other levels that I'm not going to get into, but you get the idea. It's like, that's open sesame, and pretty much any thought that travels through that energized thought body is going to show itself to me. And this is an ongoing conversation I have in the matter of any questions I ask, they are answered. I can ask people questions and I can hear the answers, even if I don't hear the person giving me the answer, which has always been fun for me since I was quite young then. I mean, you can tell some people are more, yeah.
Do you consciously do an alignment, or do you just notice it?
That is what I feel is my divine gift. It's like the fingerprint of the soul traveling in my body through this lifetime. So I use this, I employ it as a service to clients that I work with, and helping them to notice and discern. Well, mostly I used to do it just for myself to find out what are their gifts. And then I quickly learned this is a good thing to share with people. So then they can feel truly seen, like, oh, someone sees the core of me. Mm-hmm. Even though I look like this or I do that, they can see me. Mm-hmm. So I employ this skill set that I've been gifted with for healing purposes, to assess, inform, and align. And that would be my divine gift. And then I help people see theirs, as well as notice their high, middle, and low self.
I kind of remember that from when you did a reading for me years ago. But this alignment, the reason I'm asking about alignment is that that's something I have worked at for quite a few years, to consciously get those three parts in alignment, as opposed to randomly moving and not having them. So was that a natural thing for you?
It was, yes, I naturally tend to be aligned because I am very simple. So I think that's the key, like being really simple. So things, they don't tempt me the way they might tempt other people. So I don't get so distracted by my wants. They tend to be naturally what I already love and what I need. So, however, I did get off course just living in a Western world and just being surrounded by Western culture, American culture, even though I knew to pay attention, not to be pulled into advertisements and that kind of thing, I still became sort of affected, if you will, by the collective consciousness surrounding me. So I did require what you might think of as a conscious alignment following my Kundalini awakening, which I also was strongly pushing back on because it was rather shocking and pushy, and I thought, this is too much. But then it turned out this is not something to decline politely, but I can come along nicely or come along. So after that happened, then I knew I needed to do an alignment at that point in time. That was
this is reminding me, one of the things that you said to me years ago was that you have this yearning to go back to where you came from. And it really struck me. It was very poignant.
Yes. I feel a close connection with what you might call creator, with divine source, unconditional love. And to me, that's the core of that calling that I feel, because I came into this life remembering that. Perhaps I used to think it was I remembered it too clearly. Now I recognize that there's a reason to remember it that clearly, because that's how I stay. That's how I can do alignments. That's how I am aligned. There's no way that I could do that without having that awareness. It wouldn't work. So okay, it goes with the territory. But it made me a flight risk. So at age 5, when I figured out I could go back to that loving presence, I realized I can jump in front of a fast moving car and actually die. So I wasn't depressed, but I had no fear of death, because I just remembered that's the pure state of being with all that love.
So in the present, you're let me see if I can describe this. You're just opening and letting it flow through. How do you experience her? How do you see co-creation with the whole in relationship to our culture now? I mean, that's the kind of question I'm asking about the seeds. I'm not articulating this very well because I'm...
Yes. This is the book I'm working on now about the Mandela effect and its society. So I'm exactly there. I'm working on how do we do this collectively? How do we co-create with a human family that sometimes, just like with our regular families, we might wonder, how did we end up in this family? Like, how did this happen? Oh my gosh. Right. So anyway, well, it's funny. So what I do is I stay focused on my vision of this, always staying focused on that vision of the creator, of that ultimate goodness, you might call it, that feeling, that beingness of divine unconditional love. And I do have the awareness that when I was age 5, there was an angelic intervention of these star beings, and they showed up as light forms, and they spoke to me, and I felt very clearly that I needed them to be with me in this lifetime, which they assured me they would be. And I said, really? So I'll be able to see you in physical form? They said that they would be in physical forms. So I really feel, and I take that quite literally, that this is the time when the star seeds, the light beings, are here on this planet. We may be distributed, so quite likely you may wonder, why aren't they on my neighborhood, in my family of origin, so forth. That's because we're spread out, usually. And it wouldn't help if we're all lumped together, I guess. So there's a tremendous distribution of star seeds right now. These star beings, these angelic light beings. And I think clearly that's what I am as well. When these star beings talk to me, I was only 5, so they gave me 3 reasons that they would recommend that I would consider and then choose to stay and not leave at age 5 as a intentional suicide in front of a speeding car. So the first one was your parents will be very depressed, especially your mother. She'll never really get over it.
Huh.
And I could see that they would show me the possible realities. I could watch it like a movie. I could see they were saying the truth. Even so, I can't believe what I said next. It was a heartless response, which hopefully I will never do again. But what I said was, she'll be fine. Like she'll be okay. I hope I would never say that again in any lifetime. That's what I said. Then they bring in the second reason. They said, you won't be able to help all the people that you came here to help. Mm. I had a similar response. They'll be fine. They'll find their way. There are other guides. They'll be okay. And they looked a little disappointed, but then they gave me the third reason, which I don't know if I told you before, if you could possibly guess. But remember, I was 5. I can't believe this was the reason that worked. It's like, this one got me. It really got me. They said, you'll be back. You chose to be here, and you will lose your 5-year head start. These 5 years that seem interminable, they seem too long to even bear. You'll have to go through them again. You'll have lost that advantage. I thought, no, unthinkable.
That's
okay. Yeah, so there we are. So I think it was good to remember that, because then I see how all of us can be stubborn. We can be fixated on what we think we individually want. But right now, what humanity is looking at collectively is an opportunity to become evolved on a human level. We're in a real growth opportunity right now. That's why it's important for you to write the book you're working on. Very important, because people need these tools. They need to know that this is not an accident, that there's so much chaos right now, and that this is part of the activation. It's like an alarm clock going off, so that we can be aware and shaken out of our habituated reactions and start recognizing that we can pay closer attention to our own minds, hearts, and guts, and really feel where we actually are and be honest with ourselves. What do we really need? I think that's the biggest thing in my life that I'd lost touch with along the way. So when you know what you need, then it's a lot easier to stay on track. And it sounds so simple, but it's kind of a big thing.
What would you say the culture needs most to meet this activation and move forward?
Yes, we're seeing, we're actually getting the answer to that in this amazing year of the pandemic, where we recognize that everything we need to focus on, which we might know we need, we don't think we do. It's all about what? It's about our home. It's about our family. It's about taking care of our land that we live on, to really have that indigenous awareness of belonging to a space. It's getting back in daily walks. You know, all these things that we might not like are, it's very much part of this process. And people might say, well, that's just a coincidence. That's an accident. I don't believe in a coincidence or an accident. So to me, it's very, very clear. Like, this is the answer. So then, you know, the question was, what do you need? And we forgot that we're living our lives for love. I believe we have these crises with our weather to remind ourselves to care about each other, to unite prayerfully for each other. I think we've forgotten that too. We've lost our way and been focusing on too much on shiny things, things that look like they're objects that we can purchase, status symbols, just things we really don't need. So it's really, when you get focused on what you need, and then you feel really what you're living for, that's what these crises are doing to us as we face our possible death through weather events or virus and so forth. So it's been a good awakening for all of us.
That really happening to a lot of people, because early on, I mean, I'm totally not going out. Tom does the shopping. I stopped going to the gym. So I talk to people, but I'm not, engaging with people I don't know. But early on, the reports of people going to Target because they couldn't think of anything else to do. Were, were disturbing, and I wonder if people have, what's your sense of people have gotten over that?
Well, it's a generalization to say people, people are so diverse. So people that are intuitive feelers like I am, and probably you are on the Myers-Briggs inventory, we're the ones most likely to be energy intuitives anyway. We're the most likely to be shamans, to be aware that our thoughts and feelings change the physical world. And we're the most likely to also be okay just staying at home. It's like, this is cool. Yay, I can, right? But other people are going nuts. Yeah.
Indigenous awareness and love and living for each other. That's a good summary. Do you see people getting to those things by themselves? How do you think that they need help?
Well, it depends on the person. So it's a very individual process again. That's what's so interesting about the question. So each person has their own path, and some are growing at different rates. And for some, just a small amount of progress apparently is a really good thing. This is what I hear from my guides when I think I've made no difference in various people's lives, like my family of origin or what have you. That's the surest way to see my angels just fall down on the floor laughing till they're crying. So obviously just setting a good example can make a big difference. Obviously being the best person you can be and staying true to that makes a big difference. And so for those in the audience of your book who are already aware that they have these abilities, but sometimes they forget, then your book can be that reminder that they're spot on track, being true to their soulfulness, to their connection to original source, to divine love, that this is their true being, and that is infinite, it's eternal, it's perfect, and it's divine energetic expression, because everything is vibration. We are beings of vibration, and we can hold a higher frequency even when things around us seem to be falling apart. And by so doing, all of us can see some degree of change in that circumstance. Now, you're going to see different results based on who that person is and how well aligned they are and so forth. So results vary. Lots of people write to me and they just want a recipe. They just want to fix something that they did, that they want to go back in time, change it so that their loved one typically can be alive again. And that's interesting. It is possible, but it seems like the first time they want to do this is on bringing back the dead. They don't want to start with something smaller. They don't want to practice. It's kind of
okay, sure, no problem.
Right. Is it doable? Sure. But what it takes is so far beyond a regular recipe. It's very much more, just as you would practice Qigong for decades or any of the martial arts for decades before ever presuming to call yourself a master. You wouldn't just start out doing something outrageously incredible because I followed the steps for yoga and now I've brought back the dead. It's like, no, it doesn't.
I think that's a good book title, actually.
Yeah, people would buy it like, what the heck?
Gosh, it gives a whole new light to, I quit the gym and I've been doing yoga every day with this online thing that I love. I hadn't thought of that nuance of what I was doing.
It's very nuanced, yes.
I'm not really drawn to bringing back the dead, so I think
no. But these are the email bag that I get quite often. I get so many of those, and it's heartbreaking. So these are not emails that I can dismiss. I need to respond to each one of them. But it seems like what they're looking for is just that recipe. Just show me, because they've seen everything else. You can go to YouTube and learn how to do something. Where's the YouTube for this? So my wife, my child, my spouse, my parent, whoever has died, I think a mistake was made. All I need to do is go back and fix it. Show me how. They think it's rather straightforward.
That's really the biggest question you get. That's really,
It's the most typical. Because of the Mandela effect, that's Mandela being alive again. I also cover those experiences with people, celebrities that I've noticed who are alive again. I'm alive when I think I would have died a few years ago. So a lot of people go through this. It's much more common. It's like the biggest open secret that people are closeted about. When I give talks in public, the thing that people rush up to me afterward to tell me, I've never told anyone this, but what you said about being in a car, an unescapable, unavoidable car accident happened to me. I was about to be hit by an 18-wheeler. There was nowhere to go. Next thing I know, I'm on the other side of it. That's, it happens all the time.
huh.
So it's, but that's just a simple quantum phenomenon effect that I would expect to see occasionally. And when you get, what you need for a quantum jump is enough energy so that you can literally jump to another possible physical reality. So that's what people want. They want to know how to do that, but you can't fake these things. So, and usually when people are in grief after a loved one has died, they're not in an optimal position to be bringing back that loved one. It would be better for them to start with someone they don't care so much about, some random celebrity.
How interesting. So I was listening to some indigenous women talking about feminine thinking and masculine thinking, and it reminded me, or it clarified something for me that I hadn't really had clear, which is that you could describe feminine thinking as circular,
Yes,
as opposed to linear. And probably other people have written about this, but somehow it passed me by in a clear way. And so I'm thinking, this is along the lines of uh, recipes that what I'm writing about, what you're writing about, is a process, not in there's one thing leads to another. So it's a sequential thing, but it's not. I look at my life and I see all these amazing things that have happened, but only because I just took the next step and the next step did I get any place with it.
yes.
So talk about co-creation in that regard.
With respect to the intuitive versus the analytical way of thinking, the linear versus the nonlinear, this is a split that we witnessed in our Western civilization over the last several centuries, because it used to be that even in the West, there was much more balance between those two ways of thinking. And it changed really radically about 500 years ago. So the indigenous peoples, their natural native cultures are much more mindful of this nonlinear way of thinking. And I've attended some of the Language of Spirit conferences, which were a gathering of scientists. It started with the physicist David Bohm, who is the father of the holographic interpretation. He was invited to an event hosted at the Fetzer Institute in, I forget what year, 1992 maybe. It was in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And Leroy Littlebear from Canada attended, and so did one of the people that changed my life very much, is Dan Moonhawk Alfred, who's he's a linguist, and he describes himself as hanging out at the lonely intersection between linguistics, consciousness, and kind of like quantum physics, but it all comes together there. And that's what these dialogues in a very native indigenous fashion, which we now think of as Bohmian dialogue, also began. And David Bohm himself was cast out of the United States in the 1940s by his very own mentor, because he wouldn't rat out some of the people that were that he knew that were socialists and so forth, communists at that time.
Some reference to him being put aside, and I didn't know that piece of the history.
Oh, yes. There's an excellent documentary that I think you can sign up for. It's being broadcast every couple of weeks with a new panel of experts, and I think it's called Infinite Potential, and it's on, you can probably look it up and find it. It's a documentary that's free, and every time it pops up and they're showing it again, it's worth watching. I've watched it a couple times. I'll probably see the next one because I like to see the panel of experts. I like to think about it some more. But anyway, back to this dialogue I was going to. That's where I really got to see firsthand the way of thinking in a non-linear way over the course of 3 or 4 days in a row in action. And it completely rewired my brain powerfully, because it was this deep listening where when one person talks, everybody in the room would listen. And that could be for 45, 55, 65, 85 minutes. I mean, some people, once they're going, it's like the spirit is moving them and something's coming through and they just go, and nobody interrupts. So but what happens to the listener, myself as listener, was that there was a merging that happened, and I might start off annoyed with the person, like, wow, they are seeing things from a strange point of view. They seem awfully angry to me. That sounds bitter. Boy, they can't say that in public. Someone's going to arrest them. So I'm having these thoughts, monkey mind thoughts. But after something like 45 minutes or something go by, over the course of that weekend, boom, it's like suddenly I feel like what's coming through them is coming through me. Wow. And I'm feeling it on a level that it's moving through them. As they're saying it, I'm already feeling it. Wow. And something magic happens there. And they have an idea. There was one conference they had when they opened it to the public, and the question was, is there such a thing as an original thought? And what is it? And it's a trick question. And there's a book by Glenn Aparicio Perry called Original Thinking. And the idea is, yes, there's original thinking. Everything already exists. Everything that can is already here. It's very Bohmian, it's very quantum, but it's also very indigenous, very non-linear. So to me, the key to...
Because I've never related to him too much.
The book is more of his... What? Say that again?
He's very nice and sweet, but I guess when I saw him at a conference, he was real heady, and I just didn't connect.
Right. Yeah, but what he's speaking of and the events that he's talking about that I've attended, that's the magic of it. So the messenger could be the problem, but if you look deeper into the whole thing, and for that, Dan Moonhawk Alfred is amazing. He's passed away, but there's a DVD you can purchase through a website. That's the only way to get it. It's another documentary. It's The Language of Spirituality. That does not even have Glenn Perry in it at all. It's all focused on Dan Moonhawk Alfred and some of the other indigenous people, and what the ideas are. Basically, that you can never step into the same river twice. And what that means in terms of the logic that we assume with our linear thinking is correct. It's a huge mistake. We start thinking A equals A, whereas the nonlinear viewpoint knows that A does not equal A, because you can never step in the same river twice. So A is the first river stepping, and the second A is the second A. You could say they're equivalent, but that's not really true. And they know it. And that's what we need to, and we used to know this too, collectively in Western culture, but we've lost that. And there's an excellent book written about that too. If you send me an email, I can send you that one. But I think I covered it in a recent newsletter, probably. I tend to cover the books I've been reading. I can't remember the name of it offhand. I might have it next to me. That would be cool. I do. I have it right next to me. Lost Knowledge of the Imagination.
Huh.
This is by Gary Lockman. And if you want to know what happened in the last 500 years, perfect description of it.
Huh.
So back to female male thinking.
There was a historian named something McNeil who rewrote the history of the world, not from the Western perspective, but from, saying this culture was dominant in the thought here, and then the Muslim culture was dominant in the Middle Ages, and it like he didn't get a huge amount of traction, but it totally,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a good book about that too that I'm reading, also right next to me, which is The 9 Waves of Creation by Karl Johan Kellerman. And this one's about he's a physicist, so he goes through these 9 frequency waves that are going through our culture. And he does talk about this various civilizations at different times and how those waves interacted and how they, the duality expressed itself in human cultures, and where we are now with the 9th wave that came in around October 2011. But you asked about the female and male. I didn't really get into female and male, but to me it's, I think I've seen some females that think very linearly and some males that are quite intuitive. So, but there is like a yin yang to it.
Oh, well, I was, and you probably were too, totally trained in the male way of thinking. It took me years and years and years to break.
Yes. Yeah, for me it was shocking because I went through that Kundalini awakening. So it felt like the walls of my constructive fabric of reality came crashing down. And I was surrounded by a paradise jungle, but it was scary.
I totally lost you. I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen again.
Your video is frozen, but I can hear your audio.
Okay, I lost your audio, but you're frozen looking at God right now.
Oh, there you go. You're moving. Yeah.
So does this Language of Spirit conference still happen?
It may be starting up again. That was the good word I got. Not this year, but it looks very promising. I'm a big proponent for it, so I'd love to see it start up again. Right. I feel like the world needs it right now to regain that feel. There's nothing like it. We need to experience it so that we can bring that into the world.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. But it wasn't just. It was a mixture of people from various worlds, I take it.
Yes. The original idea was to bring together scientists. Originally, it would be quantum physicists with linguists who have a gift for being able to see how people are thinking based on the language, with the indigenous wisdom keepers. These would be not necessarily shaman, but they might be, but they would be wise people from the First Nations around the world, from Australia, from Canada, from the United States.
We have some old linguist friends. I'll ask them if they ever heard of that.
Yeah, and this movie is called The Language of Spirituality, and I think you can find it on the website. That's the best way to get the DVD. I highly recommend it. That's like the best intro to, besides actually going to one of these.
Yeah, sounds really interesting.
Yes.
You want to talk some more about the star beings?
Yes, I think the best way to know them is to know that you already know them, to search your heart and feel if there's a connection there. I think a lot of people feel that there is a connection. And especially now, I think a lot of people on the planet are very aware that, and there's a knowingness that goes with it. So I think the idea is to recognize that are we there? It's something pixelated a bit. Okay.
We're living on the edge, let us say.
Yes.
I felt it's interesting because most of my traveling in other worlds is very vivid, but my connection to the star beings has been pretty really felt, not visualized. So it's been harder to uh, see how to experience more deeply, I think.
Yes.
Um,
That's what I mean by a knowingness. There's an awareness that um, that it's real. It's like a visceral feeling.
mm,
And as far as the indigenous peoples go, they also know about these star beings too. They've had physical contact for centuries. So when I've seen petroglyphs, for example, I've seen hand carvings with one star being handprint, which is very different, but you can put your human handprint in it and it feels good. And then there's the clearly human handprint, which really fits nicely, feels normal.
so you're
But
talking about those big shaman hands that you see in the rock carvings, or
this
something?
was on the Navajo Nation. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think it was for one of these Language of Spirit conferences, or but it was some event that I was there for. Might have been a Science and Spirit conference. Well, whatever it was, I was given an opportunity by a friend to visit the native land. She said that it was fine. She went all the time. I made sure, like, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. So we we went into the outback where just some cows, and I saw a giant rattlesnake there, which came to me as I was meditating. It was about 6 feet long and about as big around as my hand. It was huge. And then also these beautiful handprints, carved ancient handprints with these ancient carvings on the rock.
Hmm.
And that's what I've noticed. I could put my hands on them and feel the energy. It was a very clear message just in that set of handprints. It says something that words can't even express.
Hmm.
And to me, it felt like this is the big message that we need to remember, that it's in us. We're here. We're together. It's closer than you realize,
Hmm.
and we're with you. It's kind of like all of that, but it's so far beyond the words. I'm putting words on it, but it's
Yeah.
kind of inadequate.
I wonder, there's a bunch of handprints of Padmasambhava in Bhutan for sure. And I remember one in particular. Behind this monastery, there was an enormous rock wall. There was about, I don't know, a foot and a half of space between the building and the rock wall. And then there were these handprints on the rock that were Padmasambhava. And it was the strongest place that I was of that, breaking that, there not being any time frame, just outside space time. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, and I love that in Buddhist cultures, he's so vivid. It's not, it's just like normal. Whereas we are always doing all that separation.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't seen the Bhutan handprints. It sounds amazing.
Hmm. Well, Bhutan's amazing because it's a Buddhist country. It's very, uh, it's only like, I don't know, 120 years that they've had any contact. They've had 5 kings, and the king's kids go to Western schools and come back and sort of make leaps so that they don't go through all the steps. But you go out in the country and people still are plowing with oxen and living in these wooden houses, and it's really simple. But there's like, well, is it like any other culture? There's a there's an innate happiness, truly, that, or just easiness that I haven't seen any other places. Um,
Well, it sounds beautiful.
so, do you want to say anything about the seeds we need to be planting for our? I mean, one of the ways I think about it is moving into the fifth dimension, but that's just one piece of language. the seeds for our future to shift enough so that we can continue, basically, that we can evolve and move into the next, what the Hopi called the fifth world.
Yes. Well, they would recommend, of course, to keep your Kopavi open, you know, crown chakra, keep it open. Yeah. And also keep your heart open. That's really good advice. I think that when we shut things down, that also, I would add, don't shut down any of your chakras. I think we tend to mistakenly believe that we'll be, that we'll run amok if we let our temptations guide us. But I think the seeds to plant for the future are those of recognizing that if we are the ones that we've been waiting for, then how shall we best proceed? Which is why I like the question, how good can it get, to invite my heart, my gut, my head to always aim in a positive direction for all of us. What's best for all of us concerned. And because we know what good is. We actually do. You could tell when you were in Bhutan. We know, you can feel it. People are happy when they remember what good is, when they live that way. So the seeds to plant now are the seeds of intrinsic goodness within our hearts, within our minds, within our bodies. And it's, you know, the Buddhists talk about the right thinking, right speaking, and so forth. It's mindfulness of being good in these ways. And that really is key. And if you look at Christianity, then Jesus would remind us that the kingdom of heaven is here. It's within us. It's and again, we start recognizing, well, where is that? It's in us when we choose it. But if we choose to focus too much on what we're afraid of, what we're upset about, what we're angry about, and we don't let those go, then there's no room to have that kingdom of heaven inside.
It's all so clear to you. I really appreciate listening.
I love talking with you too. I'm so glad you're writing this book. It makes me so happy.
Oh, that's good. Some days it makes me happy and some days it doesn't.
That's like being a mother.
Exactly. I want to show you something. I'm going to lift the computer up. This is a nice story. I have this friend who's how can I get this? You see this painting?
Yes, I do.
It's not real clear, but it's an Aboriginal painting. And I have this Australian friend who I've literally met once 9 years ago. But we had been corresponding, and she'd been on some adventure in near, I think she was at Uluru. And she came out with her friend, and there were some Aboriginal people by the side of the road. And she bought that painting, and then she thought, oh, it's supposed to go to Meg. And it's been this amazing gift to have it in my space and to consider, you know, it's quite different than, in some ways, than the dot paintings, but it's, there's all this movement toward the center, and I just sit and reflect on it all the time, and it's so, yeah, it's I don't know why I showed you that. I can't think of what made that happen, but anyway.
It wanted to say hi. That is super cool. I love it.
So sweet, because the woman who physically brought it back to me really wanted it, but she was told to give it to me.
Yes. That's the way art is. It has this way of speaking. You know, it's alive. Things are alive. Your book is alive too. I think that's why the art wanted to say hi, because your book is also very alive, and it's got its own spirit too.
Yeah. Well, we've been, the woman who brought it and some other people have been meeting for like 4 now. We meet every week and we have a 5-minute silence. And then we work in this pyramid that we actually, it's pretty much over the whole Bay Area. And there's some other ones around the world. But we've tended not to, we sort of visit them, but we don't. And it's a 4-sided pyramid.
Right. I could see that. Yeah.
Up and down. So every week we go in and we ask a question or we do something. And so we're exploring the edges and who's inside it and what we're supposed to learn. And it's really been fun and interesting. And it's, God, I can't, you've totally spaced me out. I can't even follow my own thoughts anymore.
I'm just amazed. I'm glad the recording is working. You know, I can't do recordings for people because everything goes K-wire.
Anyway, that's connected with this,
yes.
this, and with some of us go outside of it, and some of us stay inside of it, and it's the most, other than a couple of years ago when this friend of mine and I explored this filaments tunnel that went up into the forever, and we would go there every week. This is the second most sort of concrete exploration I've done of it's not other worlds, it's the interface.
Right.
It's big enough to hold a lot of interaction, and it's really
so these seeds, I think the seeds you're talking about are partly including that we are the star seeds we've been waiting for also. Because we have access to these areas of knowledge that we can begin to share. And each of us has a piece of this. Mm-hmm. That's what I feel when you showed me the painting. It was really clear. Mm. Very expressive too. That painting talks. Mm-hmm. It's got these cute animals. It seems like I couldn't see them, but I can feel them.
I've never thought them. I mean, they're somewhat like paramecium. That would be the closest.
But they're cute, right?
They're all like. And the white center is so. I'll send you a picture of it so you can see it. You know, okay. Straight on.
Perfect.
It's so shocking to have this pure white center and all these things moving and kind of in both directions with all these colors, and it's like this endlessly interesting thing. What's going on?
Creation. Very cool. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll find the picture because I took some pictures a while ago. Yeah, there are. So do you have other people you strongly connect with in these other worlds to like work together or to ground yourself? Or that's two different things, but you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, I was under the first part of my life, I was sort of a secret agent. It was kind of bizarre. So I wasn't really touching in with the teams. Except for divine source, the creator, that unconditional love, that's always okay. But now it's okay because I've cleared. It's a long story, but anyway, that things are cleared. But I think because I'm so habituated just to check in with divine source, that's mostly what I do, which is okay. It's fine now to reach out. I've been involved in some projects on a global mind redesign with a number of various star races, working like quality assurance to try out various models for human minds to occupy, because we were at that juncture that was the 1980s. We were right before I hadn't heard of the Indigo Kids, but they came in after this. But the goal was to find a way to activate empathy at a higher level, which looks, if on a simplified level, it's like hive insects would be empathetic because they think as one, and bring that into humanity without losing our creativity, which can be chaotic, and some people go crazy. So it was finding that balance, and I was trying out different people, various races of aliens would recommend their prototype, and I would try it and give them my honest opinion of it, which was a little intimidating, but it's like, okay, that's what I'm here for. So like the good news is I like this one, and then a lot of them I just didn't like. So it's like, can't see anyone really enjoying this. Sorry. No. So it was funny.
Courage.
Yeah, it was a good project. It freaked me out completely at the time because it was before my Kundalini awakening. So I felt like, why did I get pulled into this? Well, how did they find me? Why am I? And I went through some job interview, which I didn't sign up for. And then I passed, and like, I didn't even sign up for this. It was like, you gotta be kidding me. But now it made sense later. But at the time it was just terrifying. And I would wake up with certainty that there's a UFO in this, right in the backyard. It's huge, but it shrinks small. It's right there, I swear. I would tell my husband, and he'd say, really? Like, where is it? Like, well, you can't see it, but it's right there. I'm going there every night. I'm working on this project. Oh my gosh. And I said, I'm tired. I was complaining. Like, I work all day, and then this happens. Very funny now.
I feel like this is so rich that I just have to go away and sit with it all.
Good idea. Yeah. And we can check in again once the book moves forward if you want. And,
thank you.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful to talk with you.
Well, we're on the same team, obviously. I used to work in the corporate world, and then it was always clear, doing matrix management with projects, and now it's like you're part of the team. It's very obvious to me. You know what I mean? So when your book comes out, of course I support it and help get the word out and let people know every way I can, obviously. So
Thank you.